Julian Shaw was just 15 years old when he was moved so profoundly it changed the course of his life forever. In the 7 years since that moment, he's won international recognition for his feature documentary Darling and even picked up an AFI award for film journalism.
His award-winning doco follows the incredible story of South African satirist Peter Dirk Uys and his unconventional AIDS awareness program. And Julian, who has 3 more film projects on the go and a book out later this year, joins us now at the ripe old age of 22.
Yeah,
getting on a bit,
setting a cracking pace.
Yes, you chronic underachiever, you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Doing my best here.
Tell us where it all started. I mean, you met before we get into the actual the film.
Yeah.
15 and at school and not a care in the world. You had different visions.
Yeah, well, look, to be honest, the show did change my life, and I never imagined that I'd make a documentary. You know, I thought fictional films, that was what I saw for myself. But I was dragged along to this show. I'd never heard the guy's name. You know, Peter Dirk Uys, it meant nothing to me.
Most Australians wouldn't.
No.
Yeah, and I knew nothing about South Africa. I mean, I think I knew who Nelson Mandela was, and that was about it. It just changed everything for me. It was like a bolt of electricity, you know, through my mind and through my heart, because Peter was talking about this stuff that before that point, it was just this abstract stuff on the other side of the world, you know, Africa and HIV and AIDS. You know, it's almost like this huge metaphysical problem. You can't even think about it. It's so huge. But he spoke about it in such human terms that I only could be inspired.
Explain Peter to us.
Well, you know, he's often called the Dame Edna Everage of South Africa because, you know, he invented this woman, Evita Poseidon, out during apartheid so he could criticise the government. And she's hysterical, you know, and that's the first thing you fall in love with when you see Peter perform. But really, you know, what he's doing now is what inspired me, and that is he goes all around South Africa to townships and to schools. He's seen 1 million young people, and
that's what really affected you, wasn't it? Because you could suddenly see that as a 15-year-old, these were world issues.
Yeah, and you know, he was talking about people that were my age at the time, and that was the thing that really stuck with me. And suddenly, you know, it wasn't this abstract thing. I could relate to it. You know, the problem kind of had a beating heart, you know. I mean, often we get inundated with statistics and numbers, and they just paralyse you with fear. But the fact that Peter could actually use humour to talk about these issues, it was incredible.
So what did your parents say when...
So you met him and you expressed interest in doing something, and then you just basically rolled up on his doorstep in South Africa.
Yeah, you know, I don't think he thought I'd ever get there, you know. He was sort of like, yes, that sounds great, let's do it. And
marvellous
then I actually
idea,
arrived. Yeah. Look, people were definitely telling me to be cautious. I mean, it's pretty well documented that South Africa is a dangerous place. My South African stepmother was actually the one who sort of dragged me along to the show. And, you know, my family and friends said, just please be careful, you know. But when they saw how passionate I was about doing this, they just had to let me go.
But when you went there, what was the reality like? Did you arrive and suddenly think, oh, what have I done? What have I got myself into, you know?
I was so naive. You know, the first day I filmed in this township called Atlantis, I just jumped over the fence and started filming in people's homes. And apparently 2 people were killed on the street that day, you know. I just kind of went into it, you know, with
youthful
gusto,
exuberance.
yeah, youthful exuberance, and I got away with it somehow, you know.
I'm really keen to know how you talked Peter into actually being involved, because he is notoriously private.
Well, that's the thing, you know, I think in Darling people are seeing, you know, inside his house for the first time. They're seeing him open up parts of his life that just simply haven't been seen before. And I think maybe it was that I was just, you know, a kid with a camera and sort of naive and sort of finding my way, you know, because I had to persevere with it for a long time. And in that time, I think I just won his trust. You know, documentaries are all about trust.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that's the important thing. Obviously, I'm not sure how... Has he always been government approved? He's obviously got very high connections, the highest of connections over there. Was he able to open some doors for you? Did it all work pretty well? Is he fully accepted over there?
Eventually, you know, he certainly doesn't suffer fools gladly. But, you know, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think he was the first person to interview Nelson Mandela, you know, when he was released from prison. And I think Mandela actually has a picture of Peter on his desk, which is extraordinary. But now he's sort of the bane of the government in a lot of ways, because I think, you know, that the current government has been very, very sluggish about treating HIV and AIDS seriously. So he's a bit of a thorn in the side these days. But, you know, through him I was actually able to meet Bishop Desmond Tutu, which was, you know, just one of the most special moments of my whole life.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've sort of set it up now, but I think it's really important that people get to have a hint, of what Peter's sense of humour is like. Here's this.
Desmond Tutu was the first black person I did in my show. Because I never did black people in my show in the 1980s because I wasn't a black people. Until Desmond Desmond Tutu came to me and he said, "Why am I not in your show?" Let us realize that we are free. Free at last.
Beautifully
What a
done.
hoot.
That's just gold. You must have been going, this is gold.
I was just trying to hold the camera steady, to be honest, you know. But it's funny, you know, I've seen that footage like 100 times and I still laugh. And, you know, I've watched that particular scene all around the world and everywhere. This belly laugh just ripples through the audience. It's quite incredible. And it says a lot about Peter to have someone like that as your biggest fan, you know. It's pretty incredible.
At what point, I mean, after working on it for such a long period of time, at what point do you decide, I have enough now? Because it must be tempting to just kind of wait for that extra bit of something.
Yeah. You know, I think they say you sort of, you don't finish projects, you abandon them. But no, you know, to be honest, I got to the point where I was completely happy with Darling, you know. It started that my high school just gave me some money, you know, because I was going 2 days a week in my last year. I somehow wrangled that and got a bit of money from them to go over.
You got some funding from the HIV...
Yeah, from the AIDS Trust of Australia, you know, so once I was able to get that, I could do it on the scale I wanted to. So, you know, I've kind of said everything I wanted to with Darling, and it was very important to keep it short and sweet. You know, you could make a 4-hour film about these issues, but I think keeping it concise, succinct, and funny, most importantly, is very important, you know.
And before we get on to your other projects coming up, how bad is it? We read every day, it's getting worse and worse.
Do you know, honestly, I wish I could tell you that Darling wasn't relevant anymore. It's more topical than ever, you know. But again, I mean, I try not to get into all the statistics because I think what Peter's shown, you know, if you just use humour, if you use compassion, if you talk about these issues, suddenly there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And, you know, you'd hate for people to just be stricken with fear and not want to wrestle with the enormity of it. You just need to think about one person at a time. That's what Peter's doing, and he's changing lives with that approach.
Speaking of one person at a time, I'm sure that you must have had moments in those townships where you were incredibly affected by people.
You know, there's no question. It's completely changed my life. And, you know, I saw things making this film that I'll never, ever forget. But I guess that just stretches your mind and your soul out a bit, you know, seeing those images and, you know, particularly seeing the suffering that's there. But the thing about South Africa is that there's this suffering and this joy that just sit side by side. I mean, these kids that I filmed in their house, you know, one minute they're telling me about this spot across the street, you know, where gangs were brutalising young people. The next moment they've got the radio on full blast and they're just dancing for me and my camera, you know. It's just
great joy, isn't there, as well?
Yeah, beauty and terror together. That's what's addictive about South Africa. You know, I've been there 6 times now and kind of love it.
Yeah.
So you got 3 projects on the go?
Yeah, you know.
And a book?
Yeah. I sort of haven't been resting on my laurels as I've been out there promoting Darling. You know, I've got short films and some fictional films I'm developing, and I'll actually be acting in a film about John Kerwin, who's a famous All Black who suffered from depression, and hopefully working with Colin Friels on a short film, actually, though that hasn't been fully confirmed yet. But, you know, Colin is kind of the star of my next project, which is a book, funnily enough. There you go.
How did you... I'm fascinated by this book, reading about the I guess, the methodology behind it. Why did you choose to do the book in this particular way?
Well, it's not gimmickry. It seemed like the perfect way to tell this story, you know. It's this kind of wild story that really scribbles outside the margins. It's about this high flyer who lives in New York, whose world just kind of comes crashing down around him. He realises he's lost his imagination. He needs to find it again. So it's a really out there story. And I wrote it as a book, and then I wrote it as a screenplay. And then I thought maybe something in between would be best. You know, this story needs film frames through it. And I kind of came up with this idea. Imagine a movie in book form. So it's sort of like a graphic novel, but it's a book, but it tells its story with images too. I was just sold on the idea. It seemed perfect for the material, and it really organically came out of it. And I was lucky enough to meet Colin Friels when I was 15. I've been a film journalist with a magazine called Film Inc. For a long time. That's kind of been my film school. And I interviewed him, and we talked for about 3 hours. And he said, "Mate, if you ever need anything, just call me." And so I did.
Not what you know.
And he complied.
Yeah, well, as they say. Yeah, and he just jumped into it. He loved the idea that it was so different and unique. And the thing about Modern Odysseus, you know, I've got no illusions. It's not for everyone, but people who do like it seem to really love it. You know, it is something special. And yeah, it's a I guess, a pretty unique book. I haven't really seen too much else like it, you know.
Look, I just think you're amazing, and it's such a pleasure to meet someone with all of these amazing ideas who actually puts them into action.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.
Yeah, and congratulations on Darling. It's really, really, really moving. Thank you.